Hi, I'm Beth with American Patchwork and Quilting, and today I'm showing you how to make this easy quilt. I love this pattern because it goes together really quickly, and there's 4 different size options you can make. You can find the link to the free download in the video description. The fabric I'm using today is the Adelin Spring Collection by Sandy Gervais for Riley Blake Designs. I'm sewing the 44.5-inch square size today, so that requires 9 different prints. And from each print, we're going to cut 4 5-inch squares and 4 3.5 by 5-inch rectangles. To make it even easier, I'm using my AccuQuilt fabric die cutting machine to cut my 5-inch squares. What I love about this 5-inch square die is that there's 2 on the die, so if you fold your fabric on here and cut, you can get all 4 that you need in one pass. So you can line up your fabric and then just fold it in half, and then just make sure that you are fully covering that shape so that it will cut all the way around. Add your cutting mat, and then if you have some extra, that's fine. You don't have to cut that off. You can just kind of fold it up so when you put it through the machine, it doesn't get stuck. But this is the Go Big Electric. It's great because there's no cranking. You just put it in and it pulls it through for you. If you slide the mat off, then your pieces don't stick to it. Sometimes you get a little static. And now you have 4 of your squares all cut. Once you have all your squares and rectangles cut out of your print fabrics, you'll also need a 3.5-inch square from your background fabric for each block. So you'll need 9 of those. And now I've laid this out in 3 rows, and I'm going to sew this together. I've sewn my rows together using a 1/4-inch seam and pressed towards the rectangles. That will make sure that your seams are pressed in opposite directions. And now when I go to join the pieces together, I like to start lining up with the center so that we make sure that that is really perfectly lined up and that will come together really nicely. So those seams will nest because they're pressed in opposite directions. So you can get them right next to each other. They kind of lock together, and then I like to put a little pin across the seam so it kind of goes from one side to the other at a little bit of an angle just to hold that in place. And then I will sew this with a 1/4-inch seam. I've completed all 9 of my blocks and I've laid them out in my grid of 3 by 3 with my sashing strips in between. So now I will sew these together. I've completed the center of the quilt, and now I just have to add the borders around the outside, and then I'll prep it for quilting. I've completed my top, and now I've sandwiched it with my batting and backing, and I'm ready to get started quilting. But first, what I love to do is make a little practice sandwich with my backing fabric, batting, and then I've got my background fabric from the top. So what I like to do is test out some thread colors, test out different stitches before I quilt those on my actual top. So I'm going to show you some of the quilting stitches on this Husqvarna Viking Epic 95Q. So there's a whole menu of quilting stitches from which to choose. I thought this stipple looked really interesting. The nice thing is it tells you exactly what presser foot to use, so you have to use the S presser foot. So I have that, and I'll put that on, and then we'll stitch this out. So you can see on this stitch, the machine is pulling it in all the directions it needs to go, so I'm just really guiding it. I'm not really having to do much pushing the fabric at all. So you can see this is kind of just a meandering stipple. Now, another one I thought that I would like to try was the scallop. I thought that was very cute. Now, this one requires the A presser foot, and you do want to engage the integrated dual feed. That's what that symbol means. I've got my A presser foot on and I'm engaging my integrated dual feed, just pulling that down from the back. And now we're ready to stitch out our scallop. I think this scallop would look so cute on sashing or a border. Just a really cute design, and it stitches out really quickly. So here are my 2 completed test stitches. Ultimately, I decided I am going to do straight line quilting on this quilt, but these are so fun and I'll definitely keep these in mind for a future project. I have everything set up and I'm ready to get started with my straight line quilting. So I have my integrated dual feed engaged. I love that this is built right into the machine. You don't have to have an optional walking foot accessory. I've got my laser on. This is going to help me guide through the squares and through the center on a diagonal. And then I have my quilting bar attached as well for a 2-inch spacing. So this is great. So once you've established your first line, then you can use the quilting bar to guide along your previous line of stitching and get evenly spaced lines. So I'm going to do a big X across the center of my quilt first and then use the quilting bar to go out from there. I've finished my straight line quilting in the crosshatch design, and it gives such good texture to the top of this quilt. Now all that's left to do is add the binding. I made a second version of this quilt using the Beautiful Day collection by Corey Yoder for Moda Fabrics. This one I made in the larger size, the 58.5 by 72.5, so I wanted to quilt this on my Handy Quilter Moxie long arm. When free motion quilting, an all-over design can help you finish your quilt fast. And as a beginner, it gives you lots of practice on one design. So I'm quilting a basic swirl. This is a great design to learn since it's really versatile and looks good on lots of different quilts. When you're quilting a swirl, you want to swirl into the center, but make sure you leave yourself enough room to come back out and complete your swirl. Then you can do a little echoing along a previous swirl and then go right into your next one. When you're making these, you want to make sure you're varying the direction the swirls are going so that it's very free form, and just fill in any extra space with a little bit of echoing around the swirls that you've already made. This can help you travel between sections too. So there's a swirl in and back out. And then I'm going to travel a little bit to get back up to this section up here that I need to fill in. If you need to make a quilt for a last-minute gift, this is the perfect pattern. You can make the 4 different sizes and it goes together in a snap thanks to the simple block design and the larger pieces.